You're listening to Prosper in the Kingdom, the podcast where faith meets practical strategies to help you become healthy, wealthy, and wise. Join hosts John Cleaver and Wendy Lee as they share insights to equip you in your journey toward abundance, spiritually, financially, and beyond. Just a reminder, every situation is unique. The content of this podcast is for educational purposes only and should not be taken as specific financial or medical advice.
Welcome back, everybody. I love our intro. I'm sorry, I'm over here dancing. Wendy's making fun of me off camera, but I don't care.
I recorded it.
I bet you probably did. We'll make that into a TikTok reel or something like that. But anyway, so we are back. I'm John C. with she thinks she's funny, Wendy Lee. How are you doing today, Wendy?
I'm doing great.
Yeah, my cost at my expense. So yeah, I'm glad I can make you laugh. That's cool. We're actually talking about it's a topic that actually we can both relate to, and I'm sure a lot of you viewers can as well, or listeners. We're talking about divorce and getting your financial house right, pre-divorce, post-divorce, but obviously that's a big issue, a lot of emotion involved, and a lot of financial stuff too. So we're going to not really dig on the emotional part. We're not trying to give, divorce advice or anything like that. But what we are trying to do is really help you recognize that if you see no other alternative, you need to get your financial house. You need to get a game plan going, right? And hopefully you're going into divorce, not attacking one another. And there's 1,000 different things going on. I've been through a divorce. I went through a group called Divorce Care after the divorce. I guess while it was kind of closing before it was finalized, and it brought up a lot of things that I wasn't aware of, not just on the financial side, but kind of across the board. But on the financial chapter, I was amazed as, a financial advisor sitting in this room, how few or how little people knew about finances and what to kind of do to get ready. So that's why we're doing this episode. So let's kind of jump into this. Our goal is to, what do you need to do to protect your assets through the separation? How do you start over? What do you do? The factors that kind of play into it and things like that. But let's just be honest. I mean, divorce is, for lack of a better analogy, a financial earthquake, right? Mm-hmm. It shakes up your life, but it doesn't have to destroy your financial future. And I know, and a lot of people think in the traditional sense, and I guess, in somewhat it's, I would say the majority, but in today's economy, men and women, a lot of women are working, making money and making good money. You've got a lot of stay-at-home dads now. So the dynamic, 30, 40, 50 years ago has changed drastically. Mm-hmm. And, Wendy, I know you can kind of relate to that too. Your situation is something similar to what a lot of men face, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to share a little bit of that or.
Yeah. I mean, my situation was, I was the one making the money. And so where a lot of people just make assumptions in divorce.
They do. You're right.
That the man winds up, paying child support and things like that. In my case, I'm the one that pays child support for shared custody. And
a lot of kids.
For a lot of kids. And there's different ways to do this stuff financially. And I'll say, mm-hmm. when I first went into the process, I was thinking I would just willingly hand over a lot more than I did, but I still wound up handing over more than I should have, because emotions get involved. And a lot of times I know, I have family members that just went through divorce, and it's like, I just want it done, right? We'll just make decisions because I just want it done. And so you're in this such emotional strain that you make big financial decisions out of that frustration and just wanting it over, instead of patiently walking through it to make sure that it's actually fair.
And taking the time to do it right, and that it is, equitable for both parties involved. And I want to be crystal clear, what we're talking about today is not how do you hide things or, things like that. That is the wrong way to approach it. Because here's the reality of it. The truth always prevails. And, if I was fortunate enough when, I don't want to say it like that, but when I ended up going through my divorce, we sat down and talked through things and made the decision. We're connected. We have kids together. We're connected for life. Whether we're married or not, we're connected for life. And so she and I sat down and decided that we were going to have a conversation like adults. So, and remain, for lack of a better term, friends or friendly, for the simple fact that, we've still got graduations in front of us from college, right? We've still got marriages and grandkids and stuff like that in front of us. And we didn't want it to be one of those couples that you see on TikTok, right?
Yeah.
Where somebody's videoing the crazy exes kind of connecting. And so we also took that into the financial world. But, before we dive into kind of the game plan that you should look to put into play, you know, as Wendy just said, you've got to be very careful for letting emotions make your financial decisions. I
Mhm.
don't care, just take it. I want to be done with this. No, 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 because that's something you'll regret later.
Yeah.
And failing to separate the accounts, right? Especially, once a decision's been made, at that point, you should look to separate your accounts before you even get divorced. And, again, there's all kinds of situations. I'm not just talking about infidelities or anything like that. It may just be you grew apart. It may be, whatever, right? I was amazed going through that group how many different reasons there were that
Mhm.
people got divorced. So it wasn't like Wendy said, a lot of people just kind of project, oh, this is probably what no, you'd be amazed. You'd be amazed.
Mhm.
Uh, One big thing is ignoring taxes and insurance as well. And we're going to talk about that because a divorce can have a huge tax implication for you that you may not even be planning on. And then, looking at trusting verbal conversations as opposed to having it written. Now, don't get me wrong. I was talking to Wendy, we were going through what we're talking about, the topics. And when I was going through my divorce, we kind of worked everything out verbally and then we put it into writing, right?
Right.
Because here's the reality of it, things change. Somebody can
Mhm.
get remarried and the new spouse doesn't like the old agreement. Well, it's not in
Mhm.
writing, so we can change it, right? And that's what you want to avoid. And everybody, I think goes into, at least I hope so, goes into these arrangements kind of with the best intentions.
Yeah.
But things do change, and that's where having it in writing really kind of protects us. So let's kind of jump in, Wendy, and talk about
Yeah.
getting your house in order for that pre-divorce preparation. You've had the conversations. Hopefully, you've talked to your pastor or you've gone to a Christian counselor to try to stay together, because that's the ultimate goal. Is you want to try to stay together whether you have kids or not. But if you've come to a point, and let's be honest, it happens. It happened to Wendy. It happened to me. You're to a point where divorce is really the only option left on the table. So we're headed down that road now. So let's jump in, Wendy. Kind of what should we start looking at?
Yeah. And I just want to reiterate from my point of view is that we're not giving moral advice. We're giving financial advice. So just, putting that out there. So the first thing is to take
Come on, did I say something?
no, it's not anything you
Okay.
said. I just want to say that from my perspective that I am not giving any moral advice. I'm only giving financial advice in this.
Yeah,
In
no, fair.
this.
And same here. Same here. We're not, my whole thing
Um,
is, this is a Christian based channel, right?
yeah,
And you want to try to stay, but hey, reality is more than 50% of I think it's close to 60% now of Christian marriages end up in divorce.
yeah,
Because of a lot of the financial reasons we talk about and things like that. So, again, we're loving everybody. We're just trying to
yeah,
put it out there. If this is the road you're headed down, this is what you should be looking at. So
right.
go ahead.
Absolutely. So the first thing is like take inventory, figure out what assets you have, what debts you have, what accounts you have, and get all those. There's going to be discovery period, so
Yeah.
you can't hide anything. So you might as well just get it all out there.
Yep.
I know in some divorces, people have been hiding things that, you're not going to be able to
Oh,
hide. So get
here's
it all
another
out
5
there.
credit cards.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
List-
and that's the thing. And I really want to stress that because they're both sides, right? maybe have some accounts that you didn't know about or whatever, but it's tied to your social security number. It will be found. It will come up. So since we're ripping the Band-Aid off, let's rip the Band-Aid off.
Yeah. Get it all out there. Get it all out there. So that's the first thing, is get everything out there. You can't protect what you can't see. The second is start to separate your accounts, your credit, right? Build independently of each other if you haven't during your marriage. So your own accounts, and you still, I think in the divorce process, you still have to have transparency in all of that. But you want to start tracking what you're actually spending versus the other person, and start working on your credit. Go ahead.
Yeah, one of the things on the credit specifically, and we're talking about building your own credit and things, and I agree. But as far as if you've got credit cards that are yours versus ours, right? Make sure once you kind of okay, hey, we're gonna be getting divorced. You guys need to talk about the credit cards, right? And suggestion would be to stop using the joint accounts,
Mhm.
and definitely print out go onto the website, print out the current balance on it. Because the last thing you want to do is like, well, we're going to end up splitting the bills anyway. And I've been wanting this boat. So I'm going to go ahead and buy the boat on
Yeah.
credit, and she's going to end up paying for half of it or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
So again, just to avoid all that, get all your ducks in a row, have the numbers kind of laid out, print out the statements. If you've got credit cards that you're going to keep that are yours and yours alone, continue to use. If you don't, Wendy's about to dive into why it's important that you start building your credit.
Yeah. So yeah, you want to build your credit because you're going to have to step out on your own, whether that, regardless of which side, right? You're going to have to maybe find a new place to live. Is that going to be renting? Is that going to be a house? Also you need to gather all your documentation. So your, deeds, your paid stubs, what you get paid, what your tax returns, if you filed jointly, you're going to have to be able to see all of those. Any loans, anything you guys have together in your name or even separately,
Mm.
401ks, all the retirement stuff, got to keep all those and have them ready to go. So when you get into that, for people that go through discovery, not everybody does, but for the people that go through discovery, that's sometimes the hardest stuff to go through, is because they want all that information. So keep those in a safe digital file, and have a backup, have it somewhere you can share easily, and then a backup as well, and understand that tax impact. I'll let you dig into this a little bit more, John.
Yeah. Oh, now can I go now?
Yeah, go.
Look, thanks. So going into the tax stuff, you look at there's huge impacts, right? I mean, depending on where the funds may come. I mean, you start looking at retirement accounts. Are you going to cash them out or whatever? There's going to be huge impacts, and so you want to make sure that you're kind of looking at that and not just making rash decisions. The first thing I would recommend. Again, I'm not trying to give legal advice or anything like that, but talk to your attorney if you're using one. If you're not, at least go into use AI and kind of say, okay, hey, here's what I need to do. But whatever AI gives you the answer on, make sure you validate it with a tax professional, right? Thinking about doing this, and keep in mind that you can structure things, differently. As long, let's say you have a pile of assets, right, that are worth, we'll just use an even number, $400,000, okay, or 4 million, whatever, $400,000. Maybe the 401k is a chunk of it, but you want to have you want to stay in the house and you have 100,000 equity in there. Maybe you don't split the 401k and let them have that, and you get that equity in the house. So net, it's still a wash evenly, right? So get a little creative like that. Obviously both parties have to agree, but it can also save you both on taxes. And again, as much as you can agree with up front. When I went through my divorce, we went through a non-contested. We had a mediator, right, to make sure everything was on the up and up and fair and stuff like that kind of went through everything. But we pretty much worked everything out on our own beforehand. And as a result, our attorney fees were like nothing. I've had a close friend of mine who I met in the divorce group I was telling you about, and got to learn his story. We've remained friends because we were going through divorce at the same time. But his divorce was, in the tens of thousands of dollars. because it was a battle from the word go. And so, again, the assets, you want to split them up between each other, not give a huge portion of it to your attorneys, is what I'm trying to say there. So again, get the tax advice, but you also want to make sure you protect your insurance. Looking at life insurances, maybe you don't have life insurance, or your spouse has life insurance on you and the kids through their work. That's something that, that's not going to work, because once you go off on then you're no longer covered. Maybe the kids, and again, work all that out too. But you want to make sure you have something on yourself to protect. And you also want to make sure, if you've got kids situation, that your spouse has something to protect the kids, right? And so that's something not on the kids, but I mean, they have a certain amount of life insurance, and you can work that into the agreement and things like that. But again, kind of hammer all that stuff out, in a calm, cool, collected conversation. There's no reason to get irate. Again, it's just numbers, and you're looking to split it equally in most cases, not every case. But if you do these things before you get the papers, together and signed, it's going to save you a lot of stress. And like I mentioned with the attorneys, a lot of money down the road. And the attorneys will argue as long as you want to, right? Because they're billing you by the hour. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind.
Yeah. And then one other thing I did want to take note of is, the child support and the taxes. One thing you'll have to figure out is who gets to claim the kids on taxes,
yes,
and how all that's broken down. Do you switch it back and forth each year? So that's something to think about and work through as well. But then post-divorce, right? Now it's time to, like we're talking about, get the house in order, because now you're in a whole different
new chapter. Yep.
New chapter. So you're not living on, a lot of times if you're going from combined incomes and combined household, one set of bills, now you're separate. And that's, I will tell you from my personal experience, I had no idea how much divorce would financially impact me. Like I didn't comprehend. I was thinking, oh, it's just another set of bills. But then when you actually get into that situation, you're like, oh my gosh, this is, way more difficult. But so you've got to start with rebuilding your budget, right?
Yeah.
And get honest about your bills. What do you have to pay? Are you the one paying child support? Are you paying alimony? How long is that? What can you afford to live in? Is it wise to buy? Do you need to rent? And looking at those real expenses and real income.
Yeah. And I would look at, especially on that budget piece, I would highly recommend that you go through that early in the pre-divorce phase. What would your post-divorce look like? And, that's something that's really going to help you kind of determine going forward. And you're going to be that much more prepared in going in front of, a judge or whatever when it comes time for child support and alimony. Child support is pretty much a static formula. Alimony is a little more fluid. I mean, there are formulas for it, right? If you're in an alimony state. But it's not, it's not a written guarantee like, okay, X and equals Y. Child support kind of is. But that's going to really kind of set your mindset, as opposed to, okay, I just got emotionally devastated, and now I'm going to try to figure out where I can live and stuff like that. So as much pre-planning you can do, in that budget is going to be key, because you may be thinking, oh, I'm going to, I live in a big house now. I want to continue to live in a big house. Well, maybe you can't afford a big house, right? And so you need to kind of work through that. And that's why I think that budget piece, it's very, very critical, but you want to do it, before you actually go into the divorce piece or the divorce paperwork, because it's going to be a major factor in kind of determining your numbers. And then revisit your goals, right? Just because you get divorced, and I know a lot of people come out of it going, oh my gosh, I'm in shell shock. I can't afford anything. And, I do pretty well, but I also was very generous, and it was kind of a big shock to me as well. But I also realize and understand the importance of, okay, I need to kind of contract on my lifestyle, if you will. And, I know for a period of years, I've got this extra money going out, and I still want to make sure I'm saving for retirement and building my wealth and things like that, and making those money moves and things. So it's critical that you revisit your goals on, how do I still get to a point where I'm financially free and still able to retire at, 65, 67, 70, whatever your number is, right?
Mhm.
And that's, what's the new version now? What does it look like now? What's my game plan to get there? So if you do have a financial planner, if you're, going to stay with them now, it could get weird where you had a family financial advisor and now you don't want your ex learning or knowing, you're afraid they're going to talk or whatever. Most are professional. They're not going to do that. However, go find a new financial advisor, but definitely get in front of a financial advisor and really look at, okay, what do I do now? Because
Yeah.
you're probably going to have some assets coming, to you through 401ks or whatever, depending on the situation. But definitely you want to do that. And then, one of the big key factors, and we just dropped a video on this or a podcast as well, the emergency fund, right?
Mhm. Yes. Rebuild the emergency fund. Um, so now, that money you had in the bank, whatever you had before, it was probably separated. And so you've got to rebuild. And I'll be honest, I wasn't great at redoing that. And and it caused some pickles, right? So getting back to that 3 to 6 months of living expenses, um, you know, because things change. And you also have a lot of factors once you're divorced, especially if there's kids under 18, you have some factors that may be out of your control. If one, I have friends that wound up moving 2 states away
Mhm.
from their ex and they have kids, so they have to transport back and forth. So that's added expense. That's added time. So getting back and rebuilding that emergency fund and
Mhm.
taking care of that. And then I'm going to let John talk about this, but adjusting your investments and your retirement accounts, updating those accordingly.
Yeah, it's one of the things too. I mean, with 401ks, those are typically going to get split down the middle, right? And so you've got to go through a quadro process, QDRO, the initials, and I'm not going to go into what it stands for, but it's kind of a little bit of a pain in the butt. But that's why I'm talking about, depending on what's in there, be a little flexible. Okay, well, you just keep all your 401k. I'm going to take extra out of this bucket. Uh, Understand what the tax implications of that are, because if it's asset in a house or whatever, if you liquidate a home, there could be some extra tax implications there. So again, consult a tax advisor. But really looking at, okay, now I've still got my 401k through my job. I want to make sure I go and update my beneficiaries and do that on your insurance as well. I mean, that's something that you look at all your investments and things like that. And there's a horror story, and I've shared it in the past, but I want to share it again. This wasn't me. This was an attorney friend of mine was sharing a story about one of their clients had gotten a divorce, gotten remarried. The client was a male and he got divorced from his wife, and he'd gotten remarried and was married for 20 plus years. Had insurance, life insurance, and a pretty decent sized policy. And, he and his new wife were, everything's fine. And then he passed away. He died of a heart attack and he passed away. He had never gone back in and changed his beneficiary. So those funds went to his ex-wife, and the current wife came in. It's like, hey, this isn't right. We were married for 20 years. They were only married for like 3 or 4 or something like that. I mean, I shouldn't, make light of it because it's pretty serious. Um, and she's like, I want my money. It's my money. It's like, well, no, he never changed the beneficiary, so it's technically hers, and there's really nothing you can do about it. And so, you don't want to be in that situation. So one of the first things you want to do, and again, I know it's an emotional situation, change the beneficiaries to a trust. Your children, if they're over 18, they've got to be my age of majority, or somebody you trust. And then that's really where you need to kind of take it to that next level too, and get guidance on an estate plan. And
Mhm.
that's one of the things too, looking at, you've got to talk to that financial advisor going through a divorce. I mean, we work with a lot of divorced couples, because I coach a divorce group now, the same one that I went through. I'm now one of the coaches there. So, it's one of the things that we kind of walk you through step by step on what you need to do. And it's all the stuff we're sharing on this video.
Mhm.
But definitely get with a financial coach and look at, okay, what's my new budget? This is what I came up with. Does this look good? What am I not thinking about? I want to keep building and putting money away, even though it may be a small amount. I want to do that, but I also need to get my current stuff that I have squared away and make sure the beneficiaries are changed and it's all under one roof, right?
Yeah, and all those
Walk.
will documents, if you have those, and
Yes.
get those
Yes.
updated as well. Yep.
And now, it's important. We've got a previous video on the 4, critical documents everybody needs. And now that you're flying solo, right? Those documents are so much more critical because in most cases, if one of the spouses dies, everything's going to go to the other spouse. Kids are taken care of, no big deal, right? Now everything changes. Okay. And so you've got to ask yourself, okay, well, yeah, I've got this life insurance and I know the kids are going to go with my spouse. Do I really want to give, my $500,000 life insurance policy, just carte blanche, give it to my ex-spouse and his new spouse or her new spouse, right? Probably not. That's where you want to start talking about a trust and things like that and really get into that estate planning, which, we work with a lot of people on that as well. We're not attorneys, but we've got relationships that offer major discounts to our clients. So that's something that interests you, let us know as well. But, again, these are all things you need to think about. And then lastly, and Wendy touched on it, I'm going to hand the ball back to her, but really looking at rebuilding your credit, because typically people just say I'm not paying that, I'm not paying this or whatever, or, you want to continue to pay your bills, even if it's just the minimum payment to keep everybody's credit score clean, because you're going to need that going into buying a house or renting a house. They're going to look at all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah. I had a situation. So I hate to say this publicly, but I got married at 18. So I was divorced actually young, married and divorced young as well. And I remember we had a vehicle that was in his name, but I took in the divorce, but I didn't, or no, I'm sorry. He took, and it was in his name. No, it was in my mind. All right, let's get this together. We got divorced. He took the car. It was in my name because I had the good credit when we got married. So we were like, young, in our 20s, early 20s. And he stopped paying on the car. Well, I had to pay it. Even though I didn't live with him and I didn't drive the car, I had to pay it because it was in my name. So that's some of the stuff that you've got to get worked out, because it doesn't matter if I call the car company and be like, hey, I'm divorced. He should be paying this. They don't care. They're like, no, your name's on it.
Your name's on it. That's something too that, as you're going through those joint credit cards, you've got to decide, are you going to keep them or what's going to happen? And keep in mind, you may not have applied for that credit card, but if you used it and you signed, you're now on that credit card as a guarantor, right? So let's say a Lowe's card, he uses the Lowe's card all the time. Well, you went and picked up some tubs for Christmas and he didn't go with you. And he's like, I'll just take the card and use it. And you use it and sign. Guess what? They now have you as an authorized user on the account. So you want to double check that. And if you do decide, which I think you should, those joint accounts, you want to close those, not just, okay, they're your responsibility. You want to close them, right? And again, every situation is different. You're going to work this out, but you definitely need to, realize that that's going to be an impact on your credit as well, because your available credit limit is going to shrink as those cards close. And that's something to kind of keep in mind as you're going through, looking for a new house or renting a new house. They're going to look at your credit. So, be prepared to have that conversation with people. But don't just assume the other person's going to take care of it because the judge says it and it's in the divorce decree. Yeah, that's one thing.
Yeah.
The banks don't care. That's between you and your ex, but we've got you legally bound to this document and we're going to come after you. And you can then go after your spouse on your own or your ex-spouse on your own, but we've got you on this document. So you want to make sure you're completely transparent and having those conversations up front.
Yeah. And one other thing with regards to credit, because I know sometimes it can be really hard after divorce, if there are things in your name and you become late, just communicate with creditors, because a lot of times they have hardship programs. And if you just say, I just went through a divorce, they're going to work with you. They might adjust your interest rate down. They might, delay payments. There's a lot of things that they're going to do to work with you to help keep it in good standing. So.
Yeah. And that's critical. Don't avoid it. Just get it out there and have the conversation with him. And when he's right, they want to work with you. So, they understand the situation. They will work with you. So looking at, kind of closing this out, the mindset shift is divorce can either leave you bitter or better, right? don't go the bitter route. I'm just, take it from my personal advice, my personal experience. Just you've got a choice in how this all turns out, regardless of what the other person did or didn't do for you during their marriage. That's over. And you're looking at yourself and kind of focusing forward. And you want to go and put your best foot forward, right? So focus on, taking the emotion out, making sure you're, getting your financial house in order. And you've got a game plan, an exit strategy, and a starting strategy for your new phase of life. You can't rewrite the past, but you can rebuild a better future. Okay. So kind of keep reminding yourself of this. Every decision you make from here, every dollar you manage is part of your comeback story. Okay. So if you need help on that, let us know. We'd love to help you out on that. We can refer you to our estate attorneys to help get that in order. Or if you need the financial house, we can walk you through that whole divorce scenario and kind of build a new financial plan for you. Reach out to us, safemoneyroadmap.com, and fill out the form there. And that's going to, kind of get you in our system, so to speak. And we'll reach back out and set a time to have a confidential conversation. But it's not the end of the world. Okay. It may feel like it. It may be rough going through it. And you may feel like you're financially devastated, but it doesn't have to be that way. But you've got to get in front of it, and you've got to have a plan, and you've got to put it into play. So that's all I've got. Wendy, anything else to close us?
No, I feel like we covered quite a bit. So hopefully this
Yeah.
helps you guys be a little more prepared, or, if you know someone that's going through it, feel free to share this with them. And yeah, we look
One
forward.
thing, one thing I do want to add is we do have a divorce event coming up.
Yeah.
Actually, we've got one coming up here in a couple of weeks, November 13th. It's a informational Zoom called Dollars in Divorce, where we'll take this information and go into a much deeper dive. But I'd love to have you there. That's November 13th at 8:30 Eastern. Just go to prosperinthekingdom.com, look at our events. You'll see the link there where you can register. And if you've already missed that November event, we do these once a quarter. So make sure you catch the next one, but love to see you there. So everybody have a great day. We'll see you next week. Give us a like, give us some love, share this content. And if you're listening to us on a podcast, do us a big heart and give us a 5-star review. And we will see you next week on another Prosper in the Kingdom. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Prosper in the Kingdom. If this episode added value to your day, be sure to like and subscribe. And don't forget to share it with someone who could use the encouragement. For more resources, head to prosperinthekingdom.com. Let's continue building lives of purpose and abundance, one step at a time.